Hi, this is December 7th, the year is 2010, and I was thinking recently that I'd like to do a short video on drying firewood and storing firewood. Here's some of mine. I'll back up a little bit and you can see it is stored under cover of a porch with this end facing basically south. I always like to try to do that whether the wood is out in the open, covered of course to keep it dry from the rain, and up off the ground. I usually do it on wooden pallets. Some of this wood was purchased from a man who'd had it for a year. He had it right down on the ground, on the dirt, and of course all those pieces that I picked up off the ground were rotten on the bottom after only a year, surprisingly. A lot of people, well, let's back up a minute. First I went to YouTube, of course, and looked to see what other people had said about drying firewood. And there, of course, was a pretty lady. She was telling us about her first year of heating with wood and how she seasoned it, and how when you look at the ends and they're black, that means they're dry. Well, I don't have to tell many of you that that just is a mold on the end of the wood, and it means that the wood has been allowed to get wet, and during the warm, moist months of summer, it'll start to mold. Plenty of these pieces are natural wood color. Here's a nice piece of cherry with actually no checks on the ends, and checking does not necessarily mean that the wood is dry. This can be the end that was oriented away from the sun. Let's flip it around and see if the other end is checked. Very little checking on the other end. Any of you woodworkers will know that when you buy kiln-dried lumber from a mill, they really don't like to sell you something that's checked on the ends because it's not that usable to you. You have to cut off the last inch if it is. So their goal is to dry it without getting checks on the ends. However, with firewood it is fairly common to see, here's one right here, considerable checks on the ends because it's oriented toward the sun. The powerful radiant heat of the sun automatically does that after a few months. So there are variations in the way people do it, but basically the rules that I like to follow would be to keep it up off the ground, preferably on pallets, orient one end toward the sun, keep it covered with tarps or pieces of metal roofing, get it to a place like this, a shed or a porch, or someplace to keep it dry through the winter. I'm going to run inside the workshop and show you another way, because basically everybody has some logs kicking around which they don't dry in log form too well. Here's some pieces I picked up before it started to snow and recently decided to dry it to burn. We'll run right in here to the shop and hope that there's enough light. I devised a simple rack. Whoop, I want to get some light on here. A simple rack by the wood stove where, as you can see, the ends of these pieces are approximately 12 to 15 inches away from the wood stove, and within a couple of days these are reasonably dry, quite burnable, and you don't have to give up the space to store them long term. It's quite a unique system, which a lot of safety experts would say, oh, don't do that, it's too close to the stove, you might start a fire. Well, it hasn't started any fires yet, and I'm in here all the time and keep a pretty good eye on the situation. So maybe I'll edit this, go find some pretty girls to put in it. What do you think? Have a great day.